The British capital has always been a magnet for tourists. Shopping, the shows, and the traditional sights, including its array of stately homes. The most famous is Buckingham Palace, the primary residence of the royal family. Kensington Palace was the final residence of Princess Diana and is now the London home to her son William and his family.
Kensington Palace has an extremely rich history. It was purchased as a tiny little house in the suburbs of London in the late 17th century by William III and Mary II. And since then it has been home to members of the royal family such as George I, George II, Princess Victoria, who became Queen Victoria here. She was born and grew up here. And subsequently has remained a royal home in some respects. So the Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, lived here during the 1960s, and now it's home to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
In addition to Prince William, Catherine and their children George and Charlotte, around 400,000 guests a year visit Kensington Palace. There's lots to discover. For example, the history of the Hanoverian Dynasty. George I became king in 1714 and was followed by 3 namesakes. His grandson was the last reigning monarch to use Kensington Palace, and his court was graced by countless cultural icons of the day.
We have records of wonderful parties, amazing drawing rooms that the King and Queen held every week. There were illuminations in the gardens on a regular basis. Handel, the composer, and his famous Italian opera singers came here to perform. And the most fashionable people in London came to spend time here.
The Georgian era's legacy extends far outside the hustle and bustle of central London. Kew Palace in the Western Borough of Richmond reflects the relative modesty of George III. Predating and out-pomping Kew is Hampton Court in southwest London. First home to the Tudor kings and queens in the 16th century, it later underwent Palladian and Baroque additions before George I ordered a lavish refurbishment.
Hampton Court it's a typically British compromise, as we like to say, because the Tudor palace is still there with a wonderful, great battlements, and then there's the Baroque style, which is much more European, grander, very classical. And the two there crash into each other. If you go to the middle of the palace, Clock Court, you'll find Henry VIII facing up to the Europeans, our William III, our Dutch king, and George I, our German king, side by side, and they planned to pull it all down and build a brand new palace, but of course, being British as they had to be, they didn't have enough money and there wasn't enough political support, so we end up with this wonderful mixture of architectural styles.
The Hanoverian Dynasty, who today's Queen Elizabeth is descended from, inherited the throne by a twist of fate. The Act of Settlement in 1701 disqualified Catholics from the line of succession. And so it was that a German prince, despite his remote connection to the British royal family, became George I.
So what we're trying to do is make them more, people understand their history more and make them more popular, because they did great things for our country. They stopped us having revolutions. They helped us set up a proper democracy, the first great democracy in Europe at the time. The country was became incredibly wealthy and powerful during this time because they got on with the job. They were very efficient, but they weren't very attractive, I suppose, in some ways. Not just physically, but also they didn't do exciting swashbuckling things. They just did a really good job of running the country.
The Hanoverian kings, like their new subjects, were keen gardeners too, and every year the palace hosts the Hampton Court Flower Show, the largest horticultural extravaganza in the world. By George,